Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Metamorphosis. My name is Kat. Goodness, I didn't think I'd get a video in today, but I'm trying to squeeze this in real fast because I was just finishing Alex Collier's question and answer webinar. I was writing everything down, so I've got like 20 pages to share with you. Anyway, I wanted to kind of touch base with everyone, and I don't know how you're feeling. I'm feeling pretty good lately. Man, all this stuff with the Canadian truckers and the US is joining in on their own convoy, and we've got Australia, we've got all these countries in Europe, and now South America, like pretty much everywhere around this planet. These countries are joining in, and it's just so exciting. It's so exciting, and I love it. I just love it. I'm just so proud. I'm so proud of humanity. I'm so proud. So I just wanted to say that. And Monday when I woke up, I felt a shift. Like I felt like there was a shift. Something changed, and it just feels a lot more positive. Like I don't feel the doom and gloom as much as I did, but like there's so much more light coming in. It's wonderful. So I definitely felt a shift of positivity coming in on this past Monday. Today's February 2nd of 2022. So I wanted to see if anybody else has kind of felt that energy coming in. And then I got this new t-shirt. Look. It says Ground Crew Terra. This is like stuff Elena Danan sells for her stuff, but this symbol right here, I've been doodling that my whole life. So I just love that. And I love that, like I said in my last video, if you've watched me, we are the ground crew here on this planet. So I love this t-shirt. I think I got it on springtea.com. It was hard to find because I couldn't find it under her website anymore. I had to go and do a search for it. So anyway, let's get into his question and answers webinar from January 28th of 2022. Poor Alex. He's been really sick lately with a cold. So just pray for him that he gets better real fast. Okay, so here we go. First question. There's a portal in the Pacific Ocean that's been turned off since Lemurian times. It's said this will be turned back on and will cause unrest, but also positive changes. Do you know of this portal, and can you elaborate? And his answer was that there is a cluster of pyramidal structures, which was a center of the Lemurian civilization that sunk. The Russians have explored and mapped all of this, so they know about it, and it is assumed that our Navy, the US Navy, knows as well. If and when it is turned back on, there is a potential for rising of smaller continents of the Pacific to rise to the surface as well, which will displace water, causing the plates to move and spread throughout the world. So the potential for earth changes has been predicted. Also with smaller continents or islands in the Atlantic. So in this, specifically in the Southern Atlantic, he was talking about. The Earth herself is a part of this decision-making process. He says, we like to call the shots and know that the benevolence has been working in harmony with the soul of any and all planets. there is a symbiotic relationship occurring across the board. We won't know what that will look like until very shortly before it happens. The one thing that we can do is focus on the freedom of humanity and our own energy, and not going into fear. He said to take a stand, defend, and help defending each other, not taking any more bullshit from all these, not taking any more bullshit from all these effing sold out traitorous governments that are using all of our resources to get rich and to ultimately fuck us. We have to put an end to this. That's right. And now we have control of all governments. All the dirty governments have to go. He kind of did a little scattering through that question, but he likes to elaborate on other things. But he said, we will realize that we don't need big government. Local will go to local and smaller governments that we can take on ourselves. Humanity can take care of ourselves. We don't need them. And we need to fire them, and we need to get them out of control. We as Americans have let our government consolidate and take over. The Constitution was written to divide that power, so it wasn't all in one place. And over time, unfortunately, it's all become in one place. He said that was our fault because we weren't paying attention. And now we need to take the power back to the people. And the saying is, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So I've been hearing that for 20 years. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So all this time, like, we've been waiting for somebody else, Trump, white hats, whatever, to come in, military to come in, save us. And that's not how it's supposed to be done, okay? Because if someone else does it for you, how are you ever going to learn? So humanity itself, we've had to step up. We've had to take responsibility. And the kick in the butt was the Canadian truckers. You know, they're the ones leading the way, and we're all following, okay? Because we're all done. We're all done with this crap. We're all done with this mandate shit. So yeah, it's time for humanity to step up and to take responsibility and say no more, no more. Okay, another question was about the EBS. So someone asked, it's supposed to be basically 10 days, 3 days of 8-hour presentations. So it's not just one thing they're going to be talking about. This is what Alex thinks they're going to talk about. So he said, number one, yes, it will deal with extraterrestrials. Number two, it will actually deal with the real Earth history. Number three, Earth's humanity. They will tell us about Earth's humanity and our true DNA, our linkage to the stars, spirit, God, the creator. And we will learn about the underground civilizations, good and bad, dark and light. And we will learn about the Babylonian death cults. We will learn about the Anunnaki specifically. And we will learn about the religions, the part of organizations and orientation, going back to worship of aliens that were turned into something other than what they are. So again, in past videos, I've said these, you know, Anunnaki and other races have brought in religion as a form to divide us, okay? Some of these religious people do not understand who they're actually praying to. And he also confirms it, that basically this person that they've been praying to is not our true creator, that it has been a fourth dimensional entity that is basically siphoning power from us every time we pray. So just kind of reiterated that. He says, the only way this will end is if you totally and fully understand how we've been played. In that moment, we will become self-empowered to not only correct the path humanity has been on, but to embrace our total civilization in the idea that where we go one, we go all, and we don't leave anyone behind unless they simply choose not to go. And it doesn't mean we don't assist, but we move forward. We keep moving forward, healing humanity and getting ourselves back on track, getting to our future, the one we should have had 100, 200, 500 plus years ago. He said, hopefully the stragglers will catch up. If not, we just simply have to bless them, and that's all we can do. He said, that's my understanding of what the EBS is to cover. And then he says, this element that's coming out of the sky event, which is of course planned, what we are dealing with on the surface is the human element of this awakening, the human element, and we are responsible for that because it is us. We have to own it. And as he was talking about that, it kind of reminded me of, I watched a video the other day of like Star Trek, The Next Generation. And if you ever watched that, if you haven't, go back and watch that series, because there is a character in there named Q. And Q is the collective. And Q helps humanity. And Q is a time traveler. So if you follow this backboard, the letter 17, it's really interesting now that you look back upon that series and you see the evolution of that. And if you've watched the new series, there's a series called Picard. Like, I really enjoyed the first season, and I guess the second season is starting this month. And so the second season, Q comes back to Picard. And it's going to deal with like the Earth turning into a totalitarian state, and how they're going to change that and get out of it. So that's going to be really interesting. But and then Alex talked about him watching, he watched a video of Carrie Cassidy, who's Project Camelot, and she was talking about World War III, China, he said, etc. He said it was a very dark presentation. And I love Carrie Cassidy. I love Project Camelot because I've followed her for 12 years or more. But a lot of the time she does talk about like fearful things, you know, and it's legit, it is. But I guess she was talking about getting into World War III and all this stuff with China. And Alex says, I just don't see it. I don't see World War III. I simply don't. And I don't either. Like, I don't see it. I don't feel it. I never have. He said, we have a space fleet. We have Space Force. And he kind of laughed and he said, we could sink every Chinese ship as if it were in a bathtub. And it wouldn't take a minute to do. He says, I think ultimately when push comes to shove, humanity will join together. when confronted with where we go one, we go all, or annihilation, he said the amount of insanity is a very small percentage and they will be removed immediately. Humanity will come together, he said, and that's what I've been told. Otherwise, why would these resources be here to help us? And that got me thinking, because I've always kind of known and felt that Space Force, Space Fleet, like, and we've heard, like, we have to be at a certain percentage on this planet for anything to happen, or for military to get involved. Okay, if you've listened to any of Juan O'Savin's interviews, he's always said, like, we've had to be at like 82% or something of the planet for military to actually step in. And how would we know that? How would we know that? And I've always felt that Space Force, someone has a technology. Okay, they have a technology. They can read our frequencies. Each one of us is like a fingerprint. Okay, not only the fingerprint, but our soul has a unique frequency signature. And they can hone in on anybody they want to. If they want to take out someone, they can just hone in on that certain frequency and do something to it. So why couldn't they? That's how they can read, you know, the Earth's collective humanity. They can see where your vibration is. If you're a high level vibrating person, or if you're very low, like, they can tell. They know. Just thought I would mention that. It's like night vision, where you can see in that certain spectrum. Okay, they have the technology. They can see your frequency. Let's see. And okay, he says, if we are focusing on what we want, we will get what we want. That's the way it's always been. So, and I've talked about in other videos about manifesting. And I think I have a video basically about manifesting. How will you manifest 5D? How will you envision your new world? So anything we can imagine, which has magic in it, magi, and we will be able to create. So instead of all this fear and gloom stuff that they're trying to shove down our throats, you just think positively. You think, what do you want for the future? You know, we want a clean, healthy environment. We want good food for people to eat. We want clean water to drink, to swim in, to bathe in. You know, we want products that help us, not hurt us. We want learning centers for our children, not these stupid schools that aren't doing anything for our kids. We want apprenticeships for them so they can learn a profession, so they're interested in what they're learning. Okay, these are things you need to envision for our future, where no one is homeless, where no one is hungry, where everyone is healed. Think positively, and the more you think of that, you manifest it and it becomes true. Okay, so moving on. Question, can you explain transhumanism? How can we trust Elon Musk with his Neuralink project if he's a white hat? I don't think he answered the second part, but he says, there have been many cultures, spacefaring cultures in the past from many different galaxies that have merged man or flesh with machine. Some of it was done to prolong life for space travel, which makes sense. Some of it was done so that they could survive and adapt to certain environmental or atmospheric conditions, so their race could survive. But there have been many reasons for this. Some of it has been very altruistic, and there's always that dark side where they want to create a living organism that will last forever and can be controlled and manipulated and be obedient. He says, but it covers both spectrums. Benevolent civilizations learned a lot about that part of the past, the galactic past, the galactics past. They made a lot of self-course corrections in regards to things of that nature. Anything that is part of AI or machine-oriented always has the ability to be manipulated and turned into something that was never intended to. A good show a lot of people didn't watch. It was on Sci-Fi. They only had a couple seasons, that too. Seems like they always only just have a couple seasons of things to give you some of the truth, and then they cancel it. And it was called Krypton. I think I've talked about it before. Maybe I haven't. It was called Krypton, and it was about basically Superman's grandfather. The family of L. If you've heard me talk about like the first couple of videos about the reptilian families, the Moloch families, anything that ends in an EL, IL, AL, federal is not good. That's the bloodkin to the Anunnaki or the Draconians, reptilians. But that whole series, I loved it because it dealt with a lot of that. It dealt with how they women were never naturally pregnant, and they were grown in artificial wombs, and they were given specific professions that these kids had to grow up doing. But it also talked about I think it was Brainiac, maybe, but it was like a green creature, and he would come in, and he was kind of like the black goo, and he would take over all these planets and assimilate the civilizations. Okay, it's a really good series to go watch. Anyway, he says, in past webinars, I talked about the rings of Saturn, the old Anunnaki mining machines. They're 10,000 miles in length. They had synthetics managing the equipment. So they had, synthetic people running the equipment. He said the equipment still works after all these thousands of years. These organisms, when not working, go into cryo. And they come in and out of cryo. And when he said that, it just reminded me of Star Trek. Again, the Borg, when they would go in to their little chambers and regenerate overnight, get recharged. So it's out there. It's been given to us, right? Like they have to tell us, right? So it's been in the movies, been in TV shows, and we just think, oh, nothing of it because, oh, it's a TV show, it's a movie. They've had to tell us the truth. We just have never accepted it as the truth. So he said that's another form of what we are talking about here. When the dark side chooses to go after DNA life, specifically to twist and turn DNA life, they don't go after monkeys. They don't go after single cell amoebas. If they're going to control something, if they want to control something or to own something, what they're going to look for is something that's going to have an extraordinary DNA signature, something with great depth, great history, and holographic history and knowledge, greater than what they possess. So Earth humanity, that's why we've been singled out, because of who we are. We are extraordinary beings, he says. We just don't remember. Remember, you are powerful, very powerful beings. And sometimes we don't like to do stuff alone. That's why these gatherings, like the truckers and the stuff, is just so uplifting for everyone, because they're all in good spirits. It's all positive. They're all sharing unity and love, and it's great. It's just so wonderful for humanity right now. He says they have many ways of successful, and again, not. That's because of the soul. So I guess they're after the soul, and I've talked about that in past videos, where these beings, they're after the soul. And if you watched the TV series, that's what the Queen Reptilian was about. She wanted people's souls. He says the human spirit can be very, very strong and independent. He says when push comes to shove, if they can't get you into fear and lock you down in that way, he said the flip side of that is the soul that's extremely independent and wants to think for itself. The fact of the matter is that most of humanity wants to be independent. They don't want us to think that, but most of us want to be independent. Humanity now realizes this is a turning point for our entire civilization, what we are going through right now. We are beginning to believe in a future that involves love, light, liberty, compassion, independence, space travel, genuine freedom, unlimited creativity, and many things. At the moment, we cannot even comprehend. We're suddenly believing in promise again. He says it's very important that humanity has to step into our power. He says, I've been saying this for 30 years, and he has. We had to step into our power, and it had to be voluntary. We had to want to do it, because if you don't want to do it again, and if someone else does it for you, you're not going to understand. Okay, you're not going to feel that. So we have to volunteer to go through this experience. Okay, this is how we learn, and this is how we're going to show other civilizations. He says the white hats and off-worlders, our guides, angels, all of that has been working behind the scenes to help awaken humanity. They've been waiting for this moment, and it's coming from the soul of humanity itself. If you follow Elena Dinan, she just did a video about how our family out there are very, very proud of us right now. They're very proud of humanity and how we're standing up for ourselves. We just need to continue to do that. He says, humanity right now, we all come from out there, but right now we're all Terrans, ground crew Terra, and we are standing up for humanity. We are going to protect our home, our planet, and each other. That's what we do as humanity, and that's what we are called to do. That's what we're all here for right now. That's why we're the ground crew. We were called here to help break humanity out of this system. So we're all warriors here. He said, imagine what's going to happen when we light this place up. Imagine what it's going to do to this galaxy and to other galaxies around us. He says, a fucking bell is going to be rung that will never stop ringing. Dimension after dimension after dimension, it will ring all the way up in the dimensions. This is the moment, guys. He says, we are right there. There is so much going on, so much. Okay, another question. GeneDecode says there is a frequency that the Alliance can turn on to help awaken our DNA. Will it turn on our dormant strands of DNA? He said, I know there's a scale of harmonics that can be broadcasted through satellites and cell phone towers. 432 hertz, 528 hertz, but can they trigger a third or fourth strand of DNA is the question. He says, I'm not aware of it. He says, it's possible that off-worlders have that technology. He said, but that is not something that's ever come up in a conversation with Mornay and Orviseus, which are his contacts from Andromeda. And he says, I'm not sure how that would work. What I mean by that is, do you allow this organic light that's coming from humanity itself to continue to grow and expand organically? Or do you intervene at some point and just flip it over to the other side? Or do you allow this to happen naturally with the power of God, to let Creator actually initiate that particular phase? He says, I don't know how that would work, honestly. He said, would it be appropriate if that was the case? Why would they not just do it? Why would they not just flip the switch already by now? He says, we'd be on our freaking way, right? If they have it, why haven't they flipped the switch, is his question. That would put an end to all this bullshit already. And he's right, it's true. Why wouldn't they have done it by now? He says they have the technology, but to be able to change DNA, that could go both ways. It could unravel DNA. He says, I don't know if I were a benevolent race that I would give that technology to anybody down here yet, or at all. A lot of proven evolution would have to show first from these beings. He said to go to any galaxy and flip that switch and wake everyone up. He just kind of laughed. He said, I don't think so. So, yeah, I would think you would want it. True Creator would want the natural, organic awaken. I don't think he would want technology to help wake us up. But we don't know what's going to happen, do we? Next question was, when the hammer drops, what do you think will happen to hospitals, pediatricians, etc.? And then Alex says that he can't even go to a doctor where he is in Colorado because you have to have proof of vaccination. So he says he has to drive to Wyoming to go see a doctor, and with him being so sick, he hasn't had, the strength to do that. He says, I think the medical mafia is going to be completely destroyed. He says the AMA, Rockefeller Foundation, everything associated with the petroleum pharma empire is going to be destroyed or leveled. He says med beds and other technology, Tesla coils, other healing technology from the early 1800s or late 1800s through the 1900s that were outlawed by Rockefeller. All these technologies will be making a comeback. So exciting. Each country in its own way will establish healing protocols. They will be done with the people. It will be the people that demand what those protocols will be. He says, I think we also need to look at the idea of nutrition, the end of Monsanto, insecticides, poisoning of our food supply, poisoning of our water supply, the use of fluoride, and all those medicines to go away because, all that crap to need to go away because they're attached to the petroleum industry. A lot of our stuff, all of our plastics are made with petroleum. So think about the food that your leftovers are stored in Tupperware, in plastic, Ziploc bags, baggies, all that is petroleum based too. So not a good thing. There's so many things in our life that are petroleum based that we need to get rid of. He said, all will go away. He said, we'll have some gas and things like that. He says, but putting that shit in our body, that will end. He says, everything's going to roll back to nature. Holistic doctors, homeopathics, chiropractics will make a comeback and take a prominent place in healing in the commonplace. He said, color, light, and sound will heal us as we awaken. Our bodies are going to change, and what might be helping us now will no longer help us. So he said the big pharma knows that our octave, our frequency is increasing, and that their medicines will no longer help us. He said that's the reason why they've been trying to do that to so many of us, so that it actually, by getting that, it doesn't let us advance or ascend or raise our frequency. It keeps us here in the 3D. And plus, he said there's no money in a cure, right? They just keep you coming back, and they never fix or cure anything. And that is true. It just makes you sicker and sicker. And you look at any medication or watch any commercial for these new medications, and there's like how many lists of symptoms that are side effects that you could possibly have with these medications. My God, like, why would you even want to put that in your body? Why? So again, if anyone is interested in holistic and herbals and light, sound, color, professions, get into that now, because it's going to be very prominent in our new society. Okay. Everyone will be coming to you for healing. Okay. He says, but we allowed that. We allowed that to happen. He says, but as we have awakened, it will never happen again. We will find this out, and it will never happen again. He says, we need to be connected to great spirit, nature. He says to raise our frequency. He says we will absolutely continue to move towards our future. He says we need to empower ourselves and each other. Next question is, what was the best advice the Andromedans ever gave you? He says, wow, well, I don't know that I can actually answer that question. I've never been asked that. He says, of course, there's some really obvious ones. The one about the love that you withhold is the pain that you carry lifetime after lifetime. If you've watched some of my videos before, I've talked about that, and that has definitely helped me in many situations. He says to become completely responsible for ourselves without the coercion of a quote higher authority or someone else. Self-sufficient. He says, when I've hit a dark spot in my life, the one that I go back to is when Mornay said in the worship of the isness, the worship of the isness is the creation of self. They call creator, the Andromedans call the creator the isness. Okay. So the worship of the isness is the creation of self, is you. He says, whatever we think, wherever we are, whatever physicality we find ourselves in, God and I are together. We are never separated. No matter how far away I think that I am from that, we are never separated. He said, as Crocodile Dundee would say, God and I are mates. So I always try to remember that, because in reality, that's the truth. Whether you're in a starship traveling the galaxies, you are inside something that God created, and you are in a dimension that God created. You are never separated. He says, even the dark ones, when their reality collapses, they're going back to source. Even though, he says, even those assholes are not separated from source, from God. That speaks everything to me, he said. That means there's always home. Home is creator, he said, in her infinite wisdom. Next question. Someone says, I'm reading Transylvania Sunset and Sunrise right now, about what we found in the Bukeji. I think it's Bukeji. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Bukeji Mountains. Talks about looking glass technology, etc. Says, I haven't heard anyone else talk about Romania. What do you know? And he kind of laughed and he says, yeah. He said, that's been a secret for quite some time. The reason you haven't heard anything about it is because the technology that is there is directly connected to, he says Tartania. I think he meant Tartaria. It's connected to Tartaria, and that technological civilization, he says, unlocks a lot of Atlantean history, which is very interesting because I didn't know about that either. He said the powers that be and the militaries have gone to great lengths to not let us know about that, basically to conceal that from us. He says that's going to change soon. He says the fact that that book was even published means that there's a shift beginning to want to talk about that part of history. He says this is not the forum in which to talk about that because I don't want to get us shut down. We've had enough problems with imperial entanglements. He says, but it's coming. The revelations and disclosures are coming, which are already occurring. Much more will be coming out. However, you don't want to overload humanity, he says, because humanity has been under a great deal of stress for hundreds and hundreds of years. He said, particularly the last 5+ years, we've been under tremendous stress, which was intentional. So you don't want to overload and have humanity shut down. He says that simply can't happen. Humanity has to be a part of the Great Awakening participants. We have to be participants in this because we empower each other. Okay. Trust the information. He's at the militaries, etc. are giving you in that book. Know what's there. Just give it some time. Right now, what's on our plate is the technology of us being free. Freeing ourselves from this death cult, the matrix. He says, the mind fucking we've all had to live under for so long. Right now, we're having to deal with that. And that's enough. He says, it's one thing to fill your head with knowledge, but it's another to do something with it. So he says, when it comes time to do something and you don't stand up, what good is all that knowledge? Could be, he said, you could be the wisest poor man's slave, and what good is that? So yeah, a lot of people have this knowledge, but they don't do anything with it. So we need people that have knowledge that are going to stand up and do something with it. Another question. Can you tell us what will happen during ascension to our present bodies? Will we keep them? I think I've had some videos on this before too. He says that is potentially possible. He says with the rising of the higher frequencies and octaves, it's my understanding our additional strands of DNA will be turned on. When that happens, yes, we will be able to jump our current dimensions and with their physical bodies. Our bodies will change. What that looks like is anyone's guess at the moment. He says, but here we are in 3D. When we jump to 4D, we will be dealing with a completely different band of frequencies. We are adding to what we already have in 3D. That means the body will change in many ways. The soul shall remain attached. That's my understanding, he says. But we will adapt to these frequencies. And then from 4D to 5D is a huge leap in harmonic frequencies. He says everything is color, light, and sound. The higher frequencies, the more the higher frequencies jump, the more the higher frequencies we have, the better care we take of our bodies. He says, yes, it's a high probability we take these bodies into 5D. He says, now, will everyone get to the 5th or 5D? He says, I don't know. He says, I don't have those answers. That's why they turned off our DNA to keep us here in 3D. That was the intention. Let's not lose sight of that, okay? They wanted us trapped here in 3D. Next question was from United Kingdom. And a lady asked, we're talking a lot about common law over here. Why is it not being talked about in the US as much? And he said, actually, since the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was quite a movement for the common law. He says it hasn't gone away. People still remember. We have a very corrupt judicial federal system. He says, other than Clarence Thomas, I don't think any of them has read the Constitution. That's what it appears. Everyone is looking for a shift. We are waiting for this to turn and the shit show to be removed and the organic Constitution to come in. He said, and everyone's talking about 1776, he says, but the actual year 1792 was what was sworn in and we became a country, was 1792. And that's when we had our Bill of Rights, actually. He said that was all common law. America has a lot of work to do. We all want to fix this nightmare and it will be fixed. Next question was, I've heard there's a lot of important things going on in Scotland right now. Can you explain, basically? He says there's a lot of ruins or monoliths all over the world. There was a time all of them were turned on and they held a ground for the ley lines, the planet's original ley lines. He said, I had the honor and privilege of talking to a woman whose job it was to go to many of these places, particularly in Northern Europe, and turn on and open up these portals. One of the things she talked about was in Scotland, he said, an extremely remote place. She did what she was told to do by the off-worlders. and she was able to turn this on. As these things turn on, Earth's ley lines or frequency realigns, and the Earth chakra points go back to where they are supposed to be. He said right now they're all off. Ancient knowledge is returning to that part of the planet because the portal has been opened. He says it's kind of like when your body gets hurt and you can't get help right away, your body compensates for it. So if you get hurt, like on the left side, your right side compensates for it. He said, eventually you have to fix it, and the body is out of alignment. He said the Earth would be no different. And that's what she's been doing for thousands of years, as our Earth has been compensating for her being out of alignment. She will expand her frequency, and she needs to be realigned with the ley lines and etc. Need to all be realigned. Going on all over the world. So he said there's many people all over the world that are helping to do this and to realign Mother Earth. He said there's actually 2 Glastonbury locations. He said there's the one for the tourists in England, and he said there's actually another one where King Arthur is buried. He said, my understanding is that portal is about to be opened as well. He said it's a little bit further south of Glastonbury. He says they're waiting for the satanic cult to be taken down so that it doesn't get perverted. He said so much is going on right now. And he said he's seen the map of the Great Awakening, and he said it would be great to go through it and take the accompanying history that goes with it and future probabilities. He said that would be an excellent course to teach humanity. He said it was a very well done map, good but incomplete, he said, can be filled in and expanded. Several textbooks of Earth's history right there. So if you haven't seen the Great Awakening map, go do a search for that. There's so much information in that. Lots of things to research. Okay, next question. If the mind-altering TV has been with us since the 50s, have there always been people not affected by this, hence the people awake at this time, or were we activated in another way? He said, good question. It started before the 50s in TV. He said it started with music in the 40s. He said the changing of the frequency of the broadcasting of music began in Germany. And instead of the 432 hertz, it went to like 441 hertz. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but he said that slowly altered the brain's frequency. He said, and then TV began to process of telling you what to think in subliminal programming. He said that's why commercials are always louder than the original broadcasts. I always wondered about that. And some people totally are oblivious to it. He said cartoons went a long way in screwing up the kids with the violence. He said intervention of the Draconian Orion group with their relationship with the Nazis. So those are the people that did that to us. Corporations jumped on board with that to control and dominate. And they did that to create revenue, money. Their intention for doing that was, of course, power to control us. He said, and then they brought in the Agenda 2021 and 2030. He says, basically, with no heart, no compassion in the structure of what you are building as a civilization. He says, this is the shit you get being played out. Yes, they've done so much to us. Next question. In regards to ascension, if I move forward and my wife does not, it was a longer question, but I kind of simplified this. Will we remember each other? And he said, I don't know. He said, loved ones who are differently not awake, not listening yet. Some people are not listening yet, basically. He said, all I can do is share my knowledge, answer some questions, and try and give them a cohesion on what's going on today. But that's all I can do. So like I said, I've had people in my family that just they're not awake yet. They don't understand what's going on, no matter how much I try and tell them. There's people out there that just don't have a clue. Okay. He said, all this is unfolding as we speak. He said, when the third strand of DNA, our third strand gets turned on, we will remember past lives. We will remember the people in our lives. All of that will come back to us. That will be so exciting. We will truly know who we are and who we've been. Okay, next question. Of late, my perception of time and my days are all seem to merge into one, and the weeks are flying by. I seem to remember when I was younger, time dragged. Is this because we are transitioning out of linear time or because I'm getting older? So everyone says that lately, like, why is time speeding up? Like, the day went by so fast. I don't understand. And of course, us older people, we're like, some older people are like, oh, we're just getting older, blah, blah, blah. It's just because we're getting older, time speeding up. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. He says, reality in the octave of this planet has jumped and is vibrating faster. He says, so no one is incorrect about that. He says, how do we make into alignment with the frequency? Oh, I can't even read my own. How do we move into alignment with the frequency? So he says it's us versus Earth. We move into the flow. As we learn to do that, things will become more effortless. So I don't know if you guys have heard of 0 point, but like Graham Hancock, there's been several other people in the past who have talked about, I can't think of his name right now. I've talked about 0 point. We're reaching a 0 point. So time will be speeding up faster and faster and faster until we just hit a point where we're not going to be in this, what we think is linear time. That yes, everything, the days seem to merge, seem to blend together. It all just, yeah, it's mind-blowing for us to be going through this experience, but that's what's going to happen, is it's just going to be getting faster and faster until we hit a certain point, and then it's all just going to merge together. Next question. If Earth is constantly moving through space, I've had this question before, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it? They talk about a dome being over us, so this is a question. But if Earth is constantly moving through space, why are we always seeing the same stars? When will humans be told the reality of our planet? He says, it's going to happen. We will be told. He says, the first is that they have to tell you who you are. You have to get the idea, and you have to first get the grasp of who you are as humanity. So he says, what are you in this scenario? Then everything will make more sense. So he didn't really fully answer that question, but I've always wondered that too. If we are flying through space, spiraling through space, why do our stars not change? Good question, huh? So that's where he kind of ended it. So there's a lot of information there, guys. A lot of information. Hopefully you learned some new things. I did. Like I said, I always, after listening to him for so long, I still have to watch like every webinar because there's always things, and it depends on the question that's asked of how he answers. And I still learn things from him. So anyway, I just thought I would share that information with you guys. And hopefully, if you liked this, share with people and subscribe. Pass this on. And if you have any questions, my email is below. You can email me. So hang in there, guys. So many changes happening right now. There's so many changes. And you know what? I've been so tired lately. Like I think I just wanted to sleep all day today, but and we were supposed to get a big, huge solar storm today. And right now, right outside my window, it's cloudy and I'm getting snow flurries. So I just know I have a lot of pressure in my head today. And I'm just kind of feeling a little off, but I feel like my energy is drained. And that always happens when we get a huge solar flare for me. At least my nosebleeds have stopped. So I had it for like a week and a half. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of stopped again. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And I will do another video for you next week. And I love all of you. Thank you so much for all my subscribers. I appreciate you. You are my soul family. Love you. Hang in there, guys. Okay, you are very, very special. Very special. And I love all of you. I wish I could give every one of you a great big hug. And we will get through this. And I will see you next week. Bye.